Great, we're at Temple Church, and what a church this is. We're on Bodmin or BODMIN MOOR, a little place on the outskirts of Bodmin called Temple. Understandably so, it's full of Knight Templar history. It's got an amazing energy to it. Understandably so. My 46th great-grandfather travelled through this way and was, I say involved in the area, but only for a matter of months, but enough to place his mark, Lancelot Desposyni, which is quite interesting. So, and that's what it's also very personal to me as well. So from the Fordham line, so when you go back in the Fordham line, it transposes itself or transforms itself to the surname Desposyni that was used, and the sort of spur off from there. So that's really interesting. Let me just show you around the church itself. It's beautiful. It's got a wonderful feel to it. It's nice to see it open. Obviously, it's got your sanitisers and stuff. This is lovely. The fact that, you know, you've got a beautiful pulpit here. You've got, I didn't see the line works on there, which is lovely. And they just put a few candles around there. This I do find quite interesting as well, in the sense, if you can see here. And I love that. He prayeth well who loveth well, both man and bird and beast. So in other words, if you will it enough and you pray for it enough, then hopefully your prayers will be answered, you know, by whichever deity you follow, really, to be fair. So that's quite interesting. Little step up here. And then we've got just over here. I won't take you to the sides, that's a bit too much with the two knights on each side, unless you can grab that. Can you catch that, Janice, probably? But we've got the wonderful piece of artwork here. Obviously this is relatively modern artwork there, on the glass, as it were. And then here you've got the Knight Templar, the knight on horseback there with what's interesting is not necessarily the knight himself, it's the little symbols below. So you've got the two squares plus the two dots, and then you've got the octagon, if that makes sense. That's more of interest with respect the symbology there as opposed to the actual knight himself. But the knight's there to take your focus away from the symbols that are there. So, which is quite interesting. We'll just head down. You can see that one there, that's a modern piece of artwork there. Quite interesting though, albeit holding the sword and the sheath. And then obviously up here we've got you've got the lamb there at the bottom. You can see that, how far you can get into there, but you've got the lamb there down at the bottom with the feet, with a sheaf of corn, and then you've got the book there reading that as well, which is quite interesting. So just moving along. Now we know that this church has been here for many, many, many years. I mean, there's talk it could be 400, it could be 600, it could be 1100 AD. The fact remains that whatever was here, it's the actual site and the area that's of most interest, really, to be fair. Again, lovely pieces. You can see the faces have worn out a little bit over time. But I do quite like and quite enjoy the two sort of equilateral crosses there, as we can see, with the shining through. Sometimes the smaller parts in the artwork is more important than the larger object itself, so that's quite of interest. So it's just got a lovely, lovely feel about it. Great, so as we said, in this little section it's been modern really, and it's been restored a bit, but it's still part of the church, you know, it's quite interesting how it's all been maintained. It's lovely, you can tell that lots of love and care and attention has gone into this particular church, most importantly. Coming up to the high altar part, quite interesting with the actual altar itself. And obviously you shouldn't normally come onto a high altar unless you're of the priesthood, really. So that allows me to come on, obviously. So yeah, basically you've got some. It's interesting works, and I like the fact it's got the little statues there that someone's obviously, you know, it's just quite interesting. So it's a break from the norm to have the flowers and the candles and the statues there. And I particularly like this here. you've got the Jesus. Now, most of us know that, you know, the story of the crucifixion may or may not be true. I'll leave that down to your own interpretation. But it's quite an interesting interpretation of the sacrifice of mankind upon the equals of life, really. So, yeah, all in all, a really lovely church. It's worth a visit. It's slightly off the beaten track. You may not be able to find it so soon. But it's, yeah, Quest 31, Temple Church, in Temple, on Bodmin Moor.